Now, before we start the back side of the notes, we need to have a little bit of an Algebra 1 refresher again. So, the first thing I want you to look at is number 1. It says factor the expression. So it's a simple trinomial, and if we factor it, we would do 2 sets of binomials. We would need an x and an x. And what factors of 9 will add and give me 6? Well, 9 has factors 1 and 9, 3 and 3. Well, you can clearly see 3 and 3, if we add this up in here and here, if those are both positive, they will give us a positive 6x. So this is a positive, this is a positive. So you can actually write this x plus 3 condensed squared. Now over here we have x squared minus 8x plus 16. So again, x squared, not x squared, x and x, factors of 16 that'll give us 8 will be 4 and 4, except this time the 8 is negative, so it's subtract, subtract. So when I do the FOIL, the first, inner, outer, last, these are going to give me negative 8. So this would be x minus 4 condensed squared. So examples 1 and 2, okay, are examples of a perfect square trinomial. A perfect square trinomial. So how do you know that? 9 is a perfect square and 16 is a perfect square, and it follows this pattern. It is x squared minus 2ab, okay, plus b squared, okay. So this is a perfect squared, and the middle is double of the 4 or double of the 3. Now you have to be able to do a perfect square trinomial, and you have to kind of know where this is coming from. So when I teach Algebra 1, I teach my students something called algebra tiles. So this is a width of x and this is a width of x. So this is an x squared tile. This strip is a width of 1, but it's x long. So this is an x tile. And this little bitty one is a 1 by 1. So it's just the one tile. So back in Algebra 1, you should have done something called completing the square. So what is it? It's the method of turning a quadratic into a perfect square trinomial in order to solve by taking square roots. So here I'm going to model what we're doing just to kind of refresh your memory on completing the square, because this is a skill you have to write the non-standard form of a circle. So I have started out x squared plus 2x. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, this is the x squared. So that one big tile is an x squared tile. Okay, and then I need 2 x's. Well, this represents an x and this represents an x. So what this picture is representing is an x squared tile and 2 x's. Now notice it is not yet a square. So what we have to do is we have to add something right there. So in order for me to make this a square, I need to add 1 right here. So if I add that 1, I actually now have a square. So I need to add 1 to make it a perfect square trinomial. Now, if I factor this, you will notice that it is x and x, 1 and 1, that is positive. So it's actually x plus 1 times x plus 1. Now this is where the model comes in. This, remember, is an x tile, and this is a 1 tile. So that's x plus 1 here. This is an x tile, and this is a 1. So what you've got going on here is x plus 1 and x plus 1. So we can write this x plus 1 squared. Now let's look at number 2. In this example, we have an x here. So there's an x. But this time we have 4 x's. So I'm going to put 1, 2, 3, 4. Now notice the shape of our square. We are completing the square. So this time, what do we need to add? We need to add 1, 2, 3, 4 tiles here. So we actually need to add 4 to make it a square. So again, this is x, 1, 2, this is x, 1, 2. So if I factor this, it should be x plus 2 and x plus 2. So you can condense it x plus 2 squared. So now in question 3, I want you to focus on a pattern. Okay, so what pattern do you see? And what pattern do you see? Okay, so we start out with x squared, then I give you a number, you don't know what it is, okay, and then we're adding something right there. Okay, so how do we figure out what we're adding here? So if you look back over here, 2 went to 1, but 4 went to 4. So what is going on with that? Well, we added 1 and we added this one. Okay, so what actually is going on here is we take b and we divide it by 2 and we square it. So it's easiest to see on this one. What is half of 4? 2. What is 2 squared? 4. What is half of 2? 1. What is 1 squared? 1. So now we need to do this without drawing a picture. So if I do this one right here, x squared minus 12x add what? You must do this pattern. What is half of negative 12? Negative 6. What is negative 6 squared? 36. Notice how that's always going to be positive because a square will be positive. Now how does this factor? X minus 6 times x minus 6. So the negatives gives you positive 36 and the middles give you negative 12. Okay, let's try another one. X squared plus 8x plus something. So the rule is take half of 8, that's 4. 4 squared is 16. So x plus 4 times x plus 4, and then we can condense it to x plus 4 squared. Now, I hope that is a review of what we were needing to do by completing the square. So, the last part of the review will be solving quadratic equations by completing the square. There are 5 steps. It says in the quadratic, okay, a must be 1. If a is not 1, then you divide everything by a. So here is our example. A is not 1. So the first step, we are going to divide everything in the equation by 2. That is going to give us x squared minus 2x minus 3 equals 0. Now, step 1 is complete. Step 2, take c to the other side. So x squared minus 2x equals positive 3. Now notice when I do that, I am leaving a space here and here. So step 2 is complete. Now here it comes, step 3. Make a perfect square trinomial by taking the b term, dividing it by 2, okay, and adding the value to both sides, okay. So we're going to take that b term and we're going to do what we did up here, okay. So half of negative 2 is negative 1. Negative 1 squared is add 1 here. If I do it to this side, I must do it to this side, okay. So we just made a perfect square trinomial. If you see me abbreviate it PST, that's perfect square trinomial. Now, step 4 says factor, okay, the perfect square trinomial. So if I factor this, it's x minus 1 times x minus 1, and I can condense that to x minus 1 squared. The other side now equals 4. Step 4 is complete. Now, step 5, you isolate x by taking square roots. Square root this side, square root this side. Square and square root will undo each other, and this is going to be plus or minus 2 because I'm taking the square root of it. Now I move this over to get x by itself, and I get 1 plus or minus 2. So x equals 3 and negative 1. Now that is the Algebra 1 review. Now we need to know how to do this for geometry. We have to be able to make a perfect square trinomial. So we're going to get a to 1. We're going to take half of b. We're going to square it to make the perfect square trinomial.